This is the Spiritual Genius Show, the #1 podcast for unlocking more of your spiritual genius so you can really have it all. Get ready to discover timeless strategies and secrets you can use. You'll also hear from world-class entrepreneurs, leaders, athletes, and celebrities sharing how they've tapped into their spiritual genius, along with how you can do the same. Without further ado, here's your host, Yakov Smart.
Welcome. In this special birthday episode, you'll be hearing my top 5 lessons heading into 2025. Chances are these will resonate with you as well, and we're going to go deep today. Before we start, I want to give you a shout out, a special shout out. If this is your first time listening to the show, here on the Spiritual Genius Show, we are 11 episodes in, and especially appreciate those of you who have gone ahead and left 5-star reviews, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you happen to listen to the show. What that does, it allows the show to reach more people. It also creates a deeper energetic exchange between us where everyone wins. I win in getting the show in front of more people. You win by having more episodes to listen to. And there's people out there that could really use this message. So I want to say I appreciate those of you who've written a 5-star review. If you haven't yet, take 60 seconds. All I ask of you here. Speaking of the show, some housekeeping out of the gate. So we're going to switch things up a little bit in Q1. So instead of weekly episodes, we're going to be doing them twice a month. That's at least going to be in the first quarter. And I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball. When I originally put the show together, unlike other shows, unlike other projects that I've done, there wasn't really much of a plan. It was just like something, if you haven't listened to the first 2-3 episodes, I talk about this extensively, and I think you'll find it fascinating. But when I first put the show together, it was something that very much was, there was no plan, right? It was a quote unquote passion project, and I just needed to get it out there as a continued way of stepping into who I'm becoming. And it's crazy to think that we're 10 plus episodes in. I remember hearing a stat a while ago that most podcasts don't make it 10 plus episodes in. And so I've been reflecting this time of year, as a lot of people do. And in Q1, I'm going to be putting out a lot more content. Definitely an intention there. And part of that is going to be scaling the show back to 2 episodes a month. That's a commitment I can honor. That way we can go deep. The vision right now is to have 1 guest episode a month and have 1 solo episode a month. And if you've listened to some of the other episodes, you know these are super insightful. This isn't just like some teaser podcast where we have like a 10-minute chit chat and all is well. This is more, we really go deep. We've produced some absolute gems on the show already, and there's many more to come. So encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, binge through some of the episodes, listen to them this holiday season or whenever you find them. It's one of the most unique things out there that I've seen, and we're just getting started on the show. So what you can do in the meantime is, if you want access to more content, I'm pretty easy to find online. Couple things you can do. You can grab the guide, Manifestology for Entrepreneurs. That guide is free. You can go ahead and grab that at spiritualgenius.org/guide. It'll also put you on my newsletter list, so you get updates, because I'm going to be sharing a lot of stuff via the written form as well, heading into this quarter. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, at YakovSmartSG, on Facebook, YakovSG. So with that said, it is fitting that this is episode number 12. I couldn't have planned it better myself, because we are in the 12th month of the year as I'm recording this. And as you may have heard, there's a peculiar significance to the number 12. Think about this. There's 12 months in a year. There's 12 hours on a clock. There's 12 astrological signs. And it's one of those things, if you haven't looked into this yet, it's an entire rabbit hole. It's the mysteries of numbers, right? And the universe running in this sort of sacred order. And this idea of numbers, I mean, if you think about history for thousands of years across different cultures, how is it that numbers have been so prevalent? And how is it that, those things all came about synchronistically, right? When these cultures supposedly had no communication with each other. It was thousands of years ago. Makes you think, right? And this concept of sacred geometry has also been around for a while. Maybe one day we'll have someone on the show who's got more expertise in that. I don't claim to be an expert in it, but just makes you think, right? Numbers are another way, I believe, of decoding spiritual code. So with 12 months in a year, and this being month number 12, naturally it's a time of reflection. Okay. For, I think, not just me and you, but collectively, right? Because it's a time of completion, right? 12 signals the end of a cycle. And then January 1st, it's a 1, it starts a new year, right? And it's interesting that all this happens. Have you ever thought about this stuff, right? Maybe I just think about things a lot, or contemplate things, right? And by the way, I like the word contemplate a lot better than thinking about things. Contemplate has some intention. Contemplation has some depth. Thinking is just thinking to think. I think that's trivial and oftentimes unnecessary. But if you contemplate this, it's interesting that in the month of completion is when a lot of the major holidays are happening, right? And it's holiday season right now. This is supposed to come out on December 23rd, 2024. And I know, I'll speak for myself and for a lot of people as well, and this may be the case for you listening, no matter where in the world you're listening from, because I know we have people from all over the world who listen to the show. This can be a triggering time of year. It doesn't get talked about that much. This can be a very triggering time of year. And collectively, within collective consciousness, there's more room for introspection. And I used to ignore this. But the holiday season in itself is a huge attractor field. It's difficult to ignore. It's difficult to just put your head down and say, okay, great, I'm just not going to pay attention, give this any focus. Is it possible? Sure. But it's difficult to ignore in any part of the world. Another quote unquote coincidence, every part of the world celebrates this holiday season, this time of year, right? So it also just so happens, speaking of coincidences, that my birthday is in the 12th month of the year, i.e. here in December, and it's on the 25th day. So my birthday is right on Christmas Day. And it's a nice segue into what we're talking about here. Speaking of the holiday season being triggering and having a birthday there, as we start to talk about lessons heading into 2025. It's a question I got asked a lot as a child. What's it like being born on Christmas? Because it's an unusual birthday. I'm not the only one that has his birthday, but it's definitely a memorable birthday. I sometimes think about it. This cracks me up. Is anyone I've ever met who's gotten to know me a decent amount who will remember my birthday, can remember that day forever. Every Christmas, I'm going to pop up in their minds. It cracks me up a little bit, right? It's like, love me, hate me. You're going to remember December 25th, Yakov Smart for at least a second as you're celebrating Christmas, which I think is hilarious. And what a coincidence out of all the other days of the year that my birthday happens to be at Christmas. Now, the other ironic thing here is my family didn't celebrate Christmas growing up. What are the odds of that, right? So initially, there was some confusion not being able to celebrate the day of birthday, right? Because I grew up, and I've mentioned this on the show before, I grew up in a culturally Jewish household, although we weren't religious. And it was something that, especially in the former Soviet Union in general, to my understanding, where my parents had grown up, there really wasn't a celebration of Christmas. It wasn't like this big cultural thing, because I think here in the US and in a lot of the world, it's not even so much of a religious thing anymore for a lot of people, or even a spiritual thing. It's a cultural thing. It's a day to celebrate, day of festivities, gift giving, all those different things. And so I think there was some confusion for me as a kid because, here was this birthday, but I couldn't really celebrate on the day of the birthday. Everything was closed. The restaurants were closed. Like everything other than the Chinese food and the movie theaters seemed to be closed. And it was initially confusing. But I remember, as a kid, the cool thing was that because Christmas was a big deal, I got all the attention on my birthday, right? And that was pretty awesome. And so I remember for many years, not understanding this, I would be triggered by the holiday season. Instead of getting happy and excited for a birthday, I would be kind of in a grinchy mood. Oh yeah, everyone's just celebrating Christmas. Annoyed at the inconvenience. Kind of took pride that I didn't, quote unquote, celebrate Christmas, right? And I had a paradigm shift around this. Really, it started to happen in my mid-20s, but it really started to happen I think in 2021 is where it came full circle, right? And if you're listening to this and maybe you're feeling kind of grinchy, you don't love the holiday season, or maybe you feel like you're obligated to be around, family members or old friends, people you don't really like anymore, but you kind of like, but you kind of feel like bad if you don't have to be around them. But listen to this part, because this is something that I think is going to be relatable, even if your birthday's not on Christmas. Is the very first thing that shifted the paradigm was looking at things more neutrally, right? Because looking back, I kind of took a little bit of a victim role. I'm like, oh yeah, my birthday's on Christmas, we don't celebrate and stuff is closed and wham wham wham. Like, it's not worth looking at like that. So I neutralized. I was like, okay, objectively, if I look at the energy of the world around this day, what does the energy tell me, right? And the truth is, with the holiday season, it's a higher energy, right? People are happier than usual in most cases, right? There's more festivity and there's more love and warmth, and a lot of great things happen, right? And, remembering one thing that I learned was to bask in it more, to embrace it more rather than resist it, right? And also, it's not the time to force getting stuff done. I was reminded of that this year too. It's that, yes, you can still be productive and be focused and be on your mission, all these different things. I'm not saying to neglect that, but it's not a time to say, you know what, because everyone's doing this, I'm gonna hunker down and screw the holidays. It's available, but is it necessary, right? It's also not necessary to pretend and maintain superficial relationships. If you don't like someone, don't want to be around them anymore. You don't have to. There's no law that says, right? And if they get offended by it, have the conversation. There's probably a reason, right? It's not worth compromising your energy. So in 2021 and so on, when I look at the birthday sense, right? It's really started to reclaim its specialness, right? Before that, I was with an ex for a couple birthdays, and that was really cool too, because that was special because of the experiences that we shared. But looking back, me personally reclaiming the specialness of the day, that didn't happen until 2021, right? And so it reclaimed its specialness. And, I have a bit of a ritual that I like to do on my birthday. And you can do this on your birthday, no matter what time of year it is. And by the way, there's people that are just vehemently against celebrating their birthdays, right? And I think that's dumb, right? People say, oh, no, it's no big deal. I want to be happy every day. Okay, cool. Be happy on your birthday too, right? Like, why not celebrate? Why not enjoy it? I actually feel like if you're not willing to celebrate your birthday, you're not willing to receive goodness, right? Have it be a special day. Anytime you can celebrate you and your uniqueness and your specialness is a great type of day, right? So sometimes people call it a birth week, birth month. I think half birthdays are worth celebrating. If you want to take it a step further, quarter birthdays, right? So anytime we can celebrate, right? I think it's also interesting that a lot of cultures, like I remember visiting Colombia last year, and they have a lot more holidays than we do here in the US or in a lot of the Western world. Now there's pros and cons. You could say they're less productive. You could say their country is more chaotic, like depending on what lens you look at it. But you could also say that the people are more connected to their loved ones, to themselves in some ways, right? So I think there's a harmony between having holidays and still being focused. And I think that's available to all of us. So this year, how old am I turning? If you don't know, I'll reveal this here. It's top secret. Turning 30 fun, i.e. 31 this year. At the surface, when I hear that number, depending on how old or how young you are, I like to say like that, how young is the person? How young are you? Depending on how young you are, that you may think that's a very, very young juvenile age. Or you may think that's that's a big boy age. I kind of look at it as a big boy age, right? I remember being in my early 20s and, 31 seemed so far away. But I look at it this way, and this is where, I'm taking the astrology bias and using it to my favor, right? The sign Capricorn, which if you're not aware, that's my sun sign, is known for the Benjamin Button effect. What is the Benjamin Button effect? Aging in reverse in all the right ways. So I choose to accept more of that, right? Where getting lighter every year, right? Feeling younger, more vibrant, all those different things. I think that's a choice. And to me, over this past year, it was one of the most, I'll say, windy type of years, right? It wasn't a straight shot like, woo. It was more like windy roads, twists, turns, all these things, lots of very different places that I'm at this year than I was a year ago. And a big theme, and I'll tell you some of the lessons here in a second, a big theme is stepping into an era of more embodiment, right? Something that I noticed this year, and there's a lot of different experiences. Something that I really noticed more so this year than any year before was less learning was required in the way of like learning from someone or reading a book or listening to something, and more embodying. So more of that learning from within, cultivating more of that inner knowing. Okay. And that was a theme. I remember I went a few weeks earlier in the year without really reading any books or listening to any audios. And I thought to myself, am I slacking? No, I was integrating, right? I think and I heard about this concept through something called the Kabbalion a while ago. I haven't read that book, but it's a spiritual book. Some people really love it. But this one energetic thing resonated with me. It's, creating more than you consume, right? It makes sense with a lot of things. So in terms of content, right? It's easy to consume a lot of stuff. And I think there is a time and a place. And I use actually consumption as a way of tuning my energy, elevating my energy, right? As a tool, but not necessarily as a way of seeking the answers, right? It's more like tidbits and insights, but the answers, of course, are within, right? And so this is about being able to embody these lessons more, embody a certain frequency, a certain energy, more so than gathering information, right? This year I kind of stepped away from the student mentality. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not willing to learn. It doesn't mean that I'm still not fascinated by learning and intrigued by all those different things, but it's just like wearing more the hat of the teacher, more of the master, more of the natural. What does that mean, right? And so this was a lot of what happened this year. There was a lot of testing, a lot of getting data, implementing different things, right? So part of that embodiment is implementation and getting to that place of like creating more than consuming, exponentially more. Okay. It's that type of relationship with teaching and learning. So one habit that I've cultivated as part of this embodiment over the past few years, especially since 21, and even beyond that, is I cultivated the habit of birthday reflection. You're taking some time each year on my birthday, allocating some time and reflecting, putting pen to paper or words to Google Doc, as in my case, and looking back at the past year, the good, the bad, the ugly, looking at it objectively speaking, and most importantly, pulling lessons. And it's funny because originally the title of this episode was supposed to be Birthday Episode 5 Lessons from the Past Year, but I wanted to make it more relevant. And the most important thing here, and what you're listening to me share, are these lessons heading into 2025, So how can these be relevant? How can you use these heading into 2025? And I'm going to share these with you and a few things that happened along the way here this year. And these are my top 5 in no particular order. Number 1. Embrace energetic optimization as the biggest optimization lever. Okay, fancy words. What does that mean? So understanding that energetic waves, these attractor fields, right, are difficult waves to go against, right? I gave you an example of a holiday season, right? If you were to come into a home where they're celebrating the holidays and you brought your laptop and you were committed to working for that whole day while everyone's around you celebrating, could you do it? Yes, you could do it. Would it be a lot more difficult than under different circumstances? 1,000%. And that's the energetic attractor field, right? So rather than going against that, if you want to be in that work mode, you go to a different environment, right? If you want to be in a celebratory mode, you go to a different environment. If you want to experience more of something, you go to an environment where that's already more prevalent, right? And so I relearned, and I say relearn, I actually wrote an article about this years ago, 2021 actually, or 22, about this idea of peak setup versus peak performance. It doesn't get talked about much, but it's important, okay? So there's a lot of talk about peak performance. How can you optimize your performance? How can you optimize your results? I think that's great, but peak setup is the more effortless way of doing it, right? So let's say, for example, we'll just use sports as an easy type of example. So let's say you have an athlete
And that athlete goes on the court and he's focused on, peak performance. Let's say it's a football game. And that's great. It's run faster, perform, be more explosive, all those different things, win the game. Peak setup is sleeping well the night before. It's nourishing his body. It's replenishing. It's being in the right mental state, right? If the setup is off, peak performance becomes much, much more difficult to achieve. It requires a lot more effort, energy. It's exhausting and it leads to burnout. If the peak setup is optimized, peak performance will come a lot more effortlessly, right? So it's having that really strong foundation to pull from. And the same is true in business, same is true in health and creating anything. And it's really, really important, right? If you know something's going to be triggering, to optimize the environment beforehand as much as you can, right? Rather than rely on yourself to make a different decision in the moment. That can happen. It's available, but it's just much easier when things are stacked in your favor, right? When things are rigged for you. So think about that in your business as well, right? Stacking, that's doing things that you'll come pretty naturally, things that you're actually interested in, optimizing your energy, using things like human design. There's a lot of different things there. Okay. And also looking at the business, looking at your life through this lens of the map of consciousness, right? And I look at things now automatically. I look at what manifests, what comes into fruition in the 3D through this lens of the map of consciousness. And I mentioned this book multiple times in the show. If you haven't read it yet, or if you're curious about it, Levels of Energy by Frederick Dodson. It's my favorite book on this concept. Dr. David Hawkins writes about it. There's a lot of different authors, thought leaders that talk about it. But this idea of the map of consciousness is a lot less mainstream than I think it ought to be. And it's understanding that everything calibrates at a certain energy level and it's measurable, right? It takes a lot of this supernatural spiritual code. It makes it much more tangible. Okay. And if you want to manifest or create different results, one of the easiest ways to start to do that is to start to shift your attractor field, also the attractor fields that you put yourself into in the 3D. Okay. And so what I've started doing is developing operating systems to optimize my energetics in any area, right? Things that I know work for me, right? Any area you can think of, anything that's results-based. It could be things like nutrition, having an operating system for me. That operating system is subject to change, but I know that if I pretty much rinse and repeat a lot of the time, I'm going to get very similar results. Similar things are going to manifest. So I think it's important to have these operating systems because if, let's say, I'm in a lower state of energy, then I'm going to forget about the operating system. But all I need, instead of remembering the whole operating system or the whole procedure or like the important lessons, right? All I need to do is look at my phone, pull up a document, skim the operating system. It snaps me back to being conscious. It snaps me back to that level of consciousness that I'm going to need. Okay. Because what happens, I think this is one of the big flaws in the self-help world in general, is people will get all these great ideas from books, podcasts, seminars. They'll be all jazzed up and everything will be great. And then they go back to their baseline, right? Sooner rather than later. So it's really important to have a practice of an operating system that you can reference, right? It makes me think of, if you've ever seen that movie 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler and I think Drew Barrymore, where she has this really short-term memory where the next day she wakes up and she'll forget what happened, right? And so dating her, he ends up creating this video for her that reminds her, gives her like the cliff notes of who she is, their relationship, all these different things, and it brings them back into alignment. So I think it's important to be able to do that for yourself, right? Especially if you wear a lot of different hats, especially if there's a lot of different energies that are important for you to embody, is to have these operating systems, to have these playbooks, I call them game boards, that you can reference. And instead of relying on memory, instead of just relying on yourself to automatically snap into that state or that energy field, right? Which can be done. This starts the tuning process, right? So let's say you skim the operating system and then you allow for a couple of minutes to tune to that energy, you're going to be much more likely to be a match for creating those types of results, right? And again, these things are subject to change, but when you change the operating system is when you're in the right state and you've had that type of breakthrough. But you don't change the operating system when you're first skimming it, when you're not in the right energy, right? Because your focus is different, right? You're in a different energetic level and you have to be more of a match. So the other thing that I realized about this is a silly example, but you go out and experience this and you tell me. I discovered this year, right? You know how sometimes you park in like a parking garage or, in a big parking lot and you forget where in the world you parked, right? You forget. And I found a correlation between that and changing energy, right? So let's just use the gym as an example, right? Let's say I'm in a certain energy field, a certain state, going to the gym. I'll go park somewhere. Okay, cool. And then after the gym, it's a lot harder remembering where I parked. Is it because of memory problems? I think not. I think it's because I'm in a different energetic state. And so being in a different energetic state, I would have parked in a different energetic place. So what the workaround is, if you know you're going to do something that's probably going to change your energy level significantly within a few minutes or that hour, to just make a note, take a picture of where you parked, right? That's what I've noticed. So it's been one of the lessons from this year. And the cool thing is, like really does attract like. You've heard this before. And, understanding these levels of energy, understanding this map of consciousness, it's kind of like looking at like playing odds makers, right? Just like you'd see at a casino or a sports book, which I don't gamble, but like a lot of people are really into that stuff, is looking at, okay, so you've got these probabilities and being able to predict high likelihoods of what's going to manifest, what's going to come into fruition. And so I'll give you an example in business. This is just looking at energy fields and nothing else. And, it's if someone isn't into this stuff or doesn't get it, and if they hear me say this, they may say, "Oh, this guy is crazy. What in the world is he talking about?" This is true. So I remember a little while ago, we had two guys who wanted to work with us. And this wasn't for a spiritual type of coaching. This was for something else. And these are two older gentlemen. They were nice guys. They were from the Southeast, and they were probably in their 60s, if not a little bit older than that. And this business was all about online marketing. Okay, online marketing in a specific space. And I had a conversation with these guys, and they seemed really, really interested. Everything seemed to line up, but I knew they weren't going to do it. They were energetically far away from saying yes to that offer. Okay. And it wasn't a matter of me, rolling out, some influence tactics or stuff. They just weren't an energetic match. They were, especially for my energy, but even the energy of that business and offer, it was far away, would not have been a fit. And that's okay. Right. And that's okay. So understanding that, now, if they completely changed their energy, or if the energy of that offer completely changed and was altered, it could have been a match. But those are the only things that would have shifted that. And that wasn't going to happen in that situation. Right. So point being, this is something that's very intriguing as well with this whole energetic optimization thing. And optimizing for that first is rather than the whole chameleon. And I think it's important to be able to shift and calibrate. And yes, all these things are important, but sometimes if things are very, very far away energetically, they're not even going to come into each other's worlds, right? It's really important to understand that. Or sometimes it's just like just two objects passing in the night, right? As was the case there. And so when I look at things, especially when I look at business now, I look at it as, imagine a Venn diagram. I see energy, identity, and strategy, right? Energy is the most important thing, right? The energetics are the most important thing, then identity, then strategy. Now, if someone's building a business or they want more abundance in their lives and they're focusing on strategy and then tactics and mechanics, which is what a lot of people do when trying to build businesses, the problem is you'd be spinning in circles for a long, long time, right? It's not the most important thing. It's not the right order to focus on things. I remember coming back, I went to a beautiful, it wasn't even a retreat, it was a beautiful spiritual workshop / business workshops, kind of cool. And this was in Napa Valley. This was in Q1 of 2024. And I remember just being frustrated. I was having some challenges in my business and doing a hot seat. And I already knew the answer, by the way. Before the person doing the hot seat, before he told me, I already knew the answer. I just didn't trust it. Was to fire the sales team, right? And I had been stuck on this idea of building a sales team in that business for over a year. I thought it was going to be my golden ticket to scaling and true abundance there, right? Because there's some other issues with sales calls and other energetic issues we don't need to go into here. But this sales team was so misaligned from my energy, the energy of the business, the energy of the prospects. And I had a lot of data at this point to show it. I had like 6 or 7 weeks of data, right? Which is a long time in that space. There were a lot of at-bats, a lot of data there. And plus I knew it intuitively. And so I hated that answer. I hated the idea of firing the sales team. But you know what? Like I made a commitment. I came back, I think on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and I fired the sales team on a Friday. And by team, it was two guys and then a third guy who had just been added on. And it was none of it was necessary. None of the team was necessary, right? And it wasn't fun. It was completely uncomfortable, a little bit chaotic initially, but the right decision. That's an energetic decision, right? They weren't an energetic match, right? And then, these guys would not have understood it. They were about tactics and scripts and scripts and scripts and all. It's not about the scripts. It's about the energy. A lot of people don't understand that. It's a little contrarian to say. In today's world, everyone wants the script, but the energy, being the energetic match, then the identity, then the strategy, right? And there's energetics to the strategy, which is also the really cool thing. So if we talk about business strategy or marketing or sales, if we start with the energetics, makes it so much easier. And it's also looking at things like, because we are holistic beings, right? Whether we like it or not, the nipping things in the butt, right? Looking at, and this is a question that I can ask you heading into 2025. It's a question I ask myself sometimes. Okay, what are the lowest energy activities? If I understand the levels of energy, the map of consciousness, in my day-to-day or my week-to-week, what are the lowest energy activities that I'm doing? Okay, now there's a caveat here. There's an objective energy to activities, okay? And there's also my intention behind it, right? So I'll give you a silly example. So let's say mowing the lawn is an activity, which I don't do, by the way. I don't have a lawn. Living in an apartment building. The world is my lawn. But what happens is, let's say mowing the lawn, let's say objectively, if we know the scale, we'll call it a 200s activity, right? 200 to 250. I have a scale that the Dodson scale that I like to look at. Okay, so we know that activity. So let's say your baseline energy is 380, let's just say, right? Okay, should you be mowing the lawn? Well, if you start doing that a lot, you're going to drastically reduce your energy. Okay, and it's going to manifest things that are more in that energy. Okay, so if that's an activity that you do and you can either delegate it, automate it, whatever you need to do, eliminate it, right? I'm not saying neglect the lawn, but it raises your energy. It allows you to spend more time, more attention, more focus on things that are closer to your energy level, and it's going to be easier to manifest things that are on par with where you're going, not where you've been. Right? So that's one example, nipping things in the butt. There's also low energy activities, right? Things like drug abuse, porn addictions, all these different types of things that are naturally calibrating at lower energies. Nipping those things in the butt, eliminating them, raises your energy. And by raising your baseline, it makes it easier to manifest more of things you want to where you're going, right? So that's a really important thing. And there's a lot to be said about releasing pockets of energy, letting go, different topics, different time. Sometimes just letting go of activities, or sometimes, being around certain people triggers you being in certain energies. So it's reducing that or recalibrating those relationships. The other thing, big thing with nipping things in the bud, this was the point there as well, is there's a second side to it that I realized this year to calibration. So let's go back to mowing the lawn. Let's say you just absolutely love mowing the lawn. Let's say you love your lawn. It makes you happy. It's your life purpose. You love riding on your John Deere, doing whatever you need to do, right? Can it be a higher level energy activity for you? Yes. If it just absolutely fills you up with joy, not you making it up and saying, hey, I'm just so grateful. Just like it genuinely raises your energy, allows you to feel alive. It's something that for you, maybe 400s activity or even low 500s activity, right? Where there's a genuine love and intuition. Maybe you have your best downloads when you're mowing the lawn. Should you do it? Does it raise your energy? Yeah. In that case, do it. And screw what everyone says. So that's the caveat that I didn't really see till this year. But that level of nuance is really key. So that's why, when working with people, we're having these conversations, we have to look at, okay, your personal lens may affect things, but inherently everything has an objective energy level, right? Within a range, but your intentionality behind it can raise it. And also, if it's something that really, really lights you up, not in a egoic way, truly in a soul way, and sometimes asserting that is easier said than done, right? But if that's the case, then there's a nuance to looking at things from this lens. part of that as well is, and I mentioned this earlier, owning being more of a natural, okay? And having gratitude for the low-hanging fruit, allowing, receiving, all these different things, and having some value. If something comes easily and effortlessly, awesome, right? I think I had this, and a lot of people who are into personal growth, self-help, even spiritual development have this belief system subconsciously of like, man, if I haven't worked hard for it, it's not worth it, right? And there's this bias of investing for something, and I think that's great. I think creating is great, you know. At the same time, something comes easily or happens to fall into your lap, embrace that. It's great. Celebrate that. It's a gift. Why wouldn't you want to receive that, right? And so part of this is owning my extraordinary, you know, the importance of owning our extraordinary is diminishing ourselves. Okay, I remember having this conversation a little while ago. I was talking to someone and these words started just coming out of my mouth subconsciously. Oh yeah, it's no big deal. Oh yeah, I worked really hard for that. Oh yeah, anyone can do it. I said to myself later, cut that out. Like, man, really? Well, how does that serve me or does that serve that other person? No, it diminishes me in my own eyes. I don't know, irrelevant what the other person sees. It diminishes me in my own eyes. It doesn't give true confidence, right? It's not coming from that place of being a natural, and it serves no one, right? That frame of looking at things serves no one. Someone said, no, own the extraordinary. Yeah, it's something that I've put some time into. Yeah, it's something that comes naturally. Yeah, I'm one of the best in the world at this, right? And saying that, owning that, attracts more ease, more effortless, and bigger games to play, right? And it allows allows you to be seen and heard by other people for who you are in your power, right? You know, if people can't see or hear you in your power, I'm not saying be brash. I'm not saying belittle others. I'm not saying not to be considerate. But if that's not happening, then it's difficult to build authentic relationships. The little old me games, they don't serve us. They don't. Oftentimes the people that do it are people who have the most to give, the most talented, the most skilled, the most loving people. No point in doing that, right? Let's drop that stuff heading into 2025. Second lesson, we went down some rabbit holes during the first lesson. That was insightful though. You never know how these are going to play out, right? I got my notes in front of me, and then we riff, and then wherever intuition takes us is where we go. So, second lesson, fun and coolness comes down to framing. Interesting, right? So, who doesn't want to have fun? I'll tell you a secret. Fun used to be one of my trigger words. In dating, someone used to ask me, "What do you do for fun?" Or even like me. So, what do you like to do for fun? Fun, huh? Well, I don't really have hobbies, you know. Try that one. It didn't really go so well. I don't know. I don't get the whole hobbies thing, right? What makes something fun? And so a lot of this year was reclaiming that, was exploring what makes something fun for me. I think those words "for me" are important words there. And I remember January of 2024, I bought this Pop-A-Shot basketball hoop for my apartment. And it fit right in. It was kind of a pain in the ass to get in there. I had a handyman come assemble it, all that kind of stuff, right? It was a real ordeal. It was like $300. And actually, I would shoot the hoop, you know, it was great. I thought, you know, I was going to be hosting a lot, did very little of that. And I found that it wasn't fun, right? It actually lowered my energy instead of being fun. Okay. It took up space, quite literally, it took up space energetically and bandwidth wise. And I got rid of it. Got rid of it in September. I was like, you know, let's have someone take it off my hands. You know, it's not aligned. It's not energetically aligned to fun for me. It's just literally taking up bandwidth, right? Might be fun for some 4-year-old kid. Might be fun for someone on their bachelor pad. Cool, let them have it. Not fun for me at this point, right? And fun can change. And yet there's things that are inherently enjoyable, okay? To me, flow is the epitome of fun. Being in flow, right? The quest for flow is... You know, and there's a great book, another Frederick Dodson book, The Flow State. I think it's the best book on flow out there. Excellent book. Comes out from a spiritual standpoint. But to me, flow is that effortlessness embodied, right? You know, being in flow, creating, right? You could be in flow doing just about anything. But for example, creating something like this, conceptualizing this episode, it's my first time experiencing flow in a few days. It felt good. I sat down at a cafe, wrote the outline, and then here, as you hear the sound of my voice, it's in flow. It's just coming through me, right? And I think that flow is fun. Finding that in activities, to me, that's fun. It also raises energy. Experiences are fun. Doing cool things are fun. Being lit up and turned on is fun. That's what's fun, right? It's not about having an arbitrary hobby for the sake of having an arbitrary hobby. I went and, did pickleball for a little while this year, and I was like, okay, it could be fun. Sucking at something isn't fun, right? I wasn't very good at it initially. I had potential, but I wasn't very good at it initially. So I knew it would require some practice and some bandwidth, and I decided that there were other things that were better to invest at it, right? Because it's an investment of energy. And so no apologies for that. I realized, okay, it wasn't going to be fun at the moment. Maybe one day I'll come back to it, but I'm not too focused on that. And so this idea of fun is arbitrary. And, shoot, this is fun. Sharing this is fun. Most things I do are at least a little fun, right? And fun doesn't have to be self-destructive, okay? And maybe you have things that used to be fun for you that aren't fun anymore. It's okay not to do them, right? Or it's okay to find higher energy versions of those things. Maybe you do something used to be fun. Now you have to do it with more intention for it to truly be fun or light you up. Great. Own that. Embrace that. Also, realizing that cool is based on perception. Okay. So I experimented a lot with being quote unquote cool this year. What does cool even mean? Right? What does it even mean? Like everyone wants to be cool. So earlier, and this was March of April or 2024, I thought it'd be a good idea to create a spiritual social club. And so what I did is I started putting time, energy, and some money into it. And my idea, and it wasn't a bad idea, right, was to get people together, do cool events, be a great way for me to meet people, be one-to-many, and for everyone being spiritual. And it would be great. And it'd also be a way for me to speak, right, to share, because that's ultimately that's what I wanted. And here we are, right? Part of the fun, it's a part of the journey. And I remember asking a neighbor if she knew anyone who, fit a certain vibe to be like my assistant in assembling the social club, the spiritual social club. And immediately we got a match. So I was excited. We had a meeting. I agreed that I'd pay her a certain amount a month. Well, it wasn't much, but it was something. And she was excited. She was gung ho. And we had this idea of develop this plan, this strategy that actually didn't make much sense energetically, which is why it didn't work out so well in hindsight. And then not so good. It was misaligned. We didn't have any events. Ended up letting her go, paying her for the first month, parting ways. We were not an energetic match, and it just was not so good. But I cut the sunk cost there, right? So the spiritual social club thing wasn't what I really wanted. Like the real interest was sharing, and there were certain people I wanted to attract, and that wasn't going to do it, right? That was more of a vanity type of thing. And it wasn't the right time, and it just wasn't energetically aligned either. And so enthusiasm is cool. Enthusiasm makes something cool. Okay, your enthusiasm, if you tell a story, it could be about something that you did that was super nerdy, but if you tell enthusiasm, put some energy into it, it makes it cool, makes it more attractive. You and I, we get to be authors of the stories. We get to frame things, right? We get to make meaning. We have to add meaning to things, right? And so something being deemed as cool comes from within, right? Maybe you like reading science fiction. Maybe there's some people who think that that's lame. If you think it's cool, you make it cool. It's about recognizing that it's cool to you. It's going to be cool to other people. And even if someone doesn't think it's cool, if they're kind of neutral about it and you talk about it, all the coolness, and you make it relevant to them, guess what? It's now cool. So cool is all how you frame something, which is really, really powerful, because for me, for many years, I was trying to be cool, but to actually be cool, you just got to be cool, right? That was a hot take right there. What I mean to say about just being cool is it's how you frame something. It's cool is a perception, right? That's what it is. And if one person really has that enthusiasm and make something cool, and another person believes it's cool, guess what? It's now cool, right? Even if you just think something is cool, it's cool because you get to decide that it's cool. Okay. Third lesson. basking in nature is an important part of my life. So if you don't know this, I live in Arizona. We have some pretty hot summers. This summer was no exception, although I feel like it was less hot than last summer. And this year I forgot to plan ahead. It was a busy year. I started looking at some Airbnbs in like May or June. I said, shoot, there's nothing really that great available. Certainly nothing in California. Northern Arizona didn't really seem like a match. And so I decided to stay here. So from end of June to Thanksgiving, pretty much, I didn't get on a plane and leave town. Got to experience the summer. Actually traveled a lot less this year, which made integration a lot easier, right? I think travel can be distracting. So this year there was a lot of like emotional, spiritual travel, but as far as like physical travel to other places, not as much. And what I realized about nature, and one great thing about Arizona is 2 hours up north, hour and a half, there's places that are 20 degrees cooler. So if it's 110, 115 here, it gets really, really hot. Check that in Celsius if you're somewhere else in the world. There's places where you can go and it's much cooler, right? And so just, understanding how much I enjoy. And it's the hiking thing too. You used to say that I enjoy hiking, don't enjoy hiking. With hiking, yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy the workout aspect. I enjoy the motion, but I enjoy the movement, being outside. That's what going on a walk to me is almost as good. Like it's just a walk in the park, a nice day out. It's being out in nature, hearing the birds chirp. I was outside the other day. I saw the swans, the white swans, which is great. Just seeing the swans, the geese, just there's something very harmonious about it. It makes me sound like a hippie, but it is what it is. It's such a big thing, right? There's a stillness there. And also being still in nature, right? Just like basking in and also moving, going on walks, runs, whatever the case may be. Okay. Although going on runs, I realized this year, it's still not my thing. Going on walks, yes.
If you're looking for more clarity right now, whether that's in your business, career, relationships, or any other area of your life, I've recorded a short training you can use to find more clarity, spiritual genius style. This training is my gift to you for being a listener of the show. To access it, all you have to do is go to spiritualgenius.org/gift. Once again, that's spiritualgenius.org/gift. Now back to the show.
Okay, number 4, deeper instead of wider. One thing that hit home this year, took a while to hit home. Took a lot of data, a lot of beating my head against the wall. How much stuff I was doing that wasn't really moving me towards the genuine vision that I had for myself, or what I wanted to create. And I'd known about human design for a while. This year, I dove a lot deeper into it. I actually paid for a reading on human design and astrology, just to get some clarity, get some additional insights. And it was a good investment, worthwhile investment. And it made sense, understanding the fundamentals of my human design, being a manifesting generator, right? If you're not familiar with manifesting generators, we're known for a lot of output, a lot of action. So being known for a lot of output, right? And discovering that human design, understanding that it's tempting to do a lot of stuff, right? It's tempting to be addicting to like doing and constantly in action, and actually embracing that, right? Because I had a point of time where I said, you know what? I'm going to do less. And I did. And there's a time and a place for it. But I just get a lot of energy from being active and doing and creating and just being a machine that way, right? You'll see a lot of it in Q1. You've already seen a lot of it with the show. And if you follow some of my stuff online, just there's so much to put out in the world, and embracing that and handling that with enthusiasm when it's backed by enthusiasm. And so deeper instead of wider is also slower rather than faster, right? Sometimes slower is better. Sometimes really that quality and that depth, right? Instead of creating 10 things, creating one thing, but making it outstanding, right? Now, there's a bit of a fine line there, right? You don't want to be a perfectionist, and you don't want to be in a place where you're just overdoing the details, right? So it's having that harmony there, right? And it's really important, that diligence level, huge. I remember doing a workshop actually in November, and it went well. It was like a manifesting type of workshop. But you know what? Like, just being real, I was preparing for that workshop the morning of, right? I was last minute, and the workshop turned out fine. Could it have been exponentially more intentional and powerful? Yeah, if I had given it the bandwidth beforehand, right? And the only issue with the workshop actually was the big picture tying it in. It was a little bit of a clumsy end to otherwise a very solid, outstanding workshop, was not reverse engineering, right? So to go deeper instead of wider, I think it's reverse engineering, having some intention. Okay, what's the outcome that I'd like to have here, right? Without being outcome dependent. And sometimes you don't know, and sometimes that's okay too, exploring that. But at least being clear of the energy. And sometimes, in the past, what I've discovered is, this, we all do this sometimes to an extent, but especially as like a manifesting generator in the human design, that was one of the ways that I looked at it, was just kind of like being all over the place. I'm doing this and this and this and this, and all these ideas. And that's great. And it's harnessing that and going deeper. Okay, what's worth considering? What's worth investing into and what's not, right? And I think slower is faster is starting with baby steps, right? It's something that I learned with relationships, people, just other projects, what to give my attention to. Starting small is such a great thing. It's such a great thing. I'd rather start faster and be wrong if I'm starting small than take a while and go big on something and find out that it's not quite there, right? So finding out the ways to start small to mitigate risk, right? And then doubling down on what's working. That's the discipline, right? And always looking for the next, whatever you want to fill in the blank, right? The next customer, the next dollar, the next level of body fat, the next relationship, whatever the case may be, always looking for the next blank is actually rooted in scarcity. You can still have that intention, still be an important thing for you. But instead of looking, there's a nuance there. It's going deeper and seeing what's in front of you and creating from that, right? That is a really, really powerful thing. Instead of like that chasey type of energy. Okay. And it's the idea, it sounds like a paradox, but it's actually exactly what it is. Relaxed focus, focusing on something and being relaxed at the same time, relaxed confidence, right? Adding more relaxation and lightness. That's been a big thing. Lesson number 5, saying no gracefully. Man, sometimes we underestimate our veto power, right? I remember I learned this trick from a guy, shout out to Ed Rush, mentor from back in the day. This trick, if you want to say no, right? Because sometimes we have trouble saying no because we want to be liked. No, but thank you for asking, right? So if you want to say no, you don't need a reason to say no. If your answer is no, but thank you for asking. And sometimes on the other side of it, if I'm making someone an offer, making an ask, right? Or a give, it's actually the same thing, but that's a different topic, different time. If I'm making someone an offer, and sometimes, there's a little bit of friction, hey, no it's okay to say no. We want an answer, one decision. Okay. That's more important. For example, there's a mastermind group that I was in. It's a great group. Really like the group. At one point it resonated at a certain level. At another point it didn't. This is a group that I was in for almost 3 years, say 2.5 years. And still really like the group, appreciate it, got a lot out of it. But I stayed in about 6 to 7 months too long, right? Because at one point it wasn't an energetic match any longer. And I was literally not even showing up to the call, not really participating, but paying for it because, really because of fear of disappointing people in the group or disappointing the leader of the group. And all that was self-perception, right? That's a self-created story, right? I don't think that was the case. And if that was the case, then that's okay too, right? Being okay with quote unquote disappointing others, right? Because your allegiance and loyalty is to your path and to yourself. Okay. And when I say it like that, you might say, well, that's selfish or that's conceited or that's self-centered. Well, it's the oxygen mask, right? It's that whole story. If you got to put on your oxygen mask first, right? If you're depleted, if you're compromising, sacrificing, if you're depleting your resources or not being true to yourself for the sake of appeasing someone else, that's lame. It's disingenuous towards the relationship. A real relationship is gonna stay through thick and thin and actually grow and strengthen, right? Same thing like with those types of business relationships. And the litmus test, great segue to that. For staying in for me in any relationship project at this point, is it because of love and growth, or is it because of fear and hanging on, right? And I'm not saying to overnight make a decision to drop things or people or any of that. I'm not saying that, right? I've done that before, and sometimes that's can be an emotional decision, like, sit with it, right? But at the same time, that is the litmus test to actually contemplate, am I staying in this because of love and growth or fear and hanging on, right? If the answer is fear and hanging on, you can exit. Okay, if it's love and growth, then double down. Now, sometimes there can be some fear mixed in there. Sometimes there can be some discomfort, but like at the baseline, is the energy love and growth, or is it fear and hanging on? And if you need some guidance around this, if you have friends or if you're working with mentors who are intuitive, who can hold space for you, they can give you that guidance, or just working with professionals, having mentors. That's really where it's key. But that is the litmus test, right? To look at objectively. The other thing with saying no gracefully is operating systems and customization. I mentioned human design, looking at things through the personal lens. How can I customize things that much more, personalize things more to meet my preferences, to meet further growth and alignment, to make things more easy and effortless, right? Great book out there called Effortless by the guy that wrote Essentialism, Greg McKeown. Excellent book. Great concept. Needs to be talked about more. Okay. And so it's looking at things through that personalized lens. Now, in spirituality, there's also a school of thought around, well, should you really have preferences? What about just surrendering? Yeah, time and a place for it. I think when you're creating intentionally in things like business or just, how you're intending your life and different things, and where you're allocating your time, energy, money, right? Operating with intention is key. Like, when in doubt, operate with intention and then surrender. It's a co-creation. This is my perspective anyway. Some people might agree, some people might disagree. It's a co-creation instead of just sitting around and waiting, right? Sometimes there's times to sit around, contemplate, receive. I get it. But the co-creation process requires something of you. It's not a something for nothing, right? In that, not forcing. What's wrong with having preferences? Enjoying yourself. Like, why wouldn't you? Right? It's like, I think sometimes we think that being spiritual or being on a spiritual path means constriction. No, oftentimes it means elevating standards, enjoying things more, really relishing something, basking in it, right? That's more gratitude. That's going deeper. That's actually more spiritual than not caring, right? Because that can come down to apathy, right? Or neglect. And those are actually very low energies. So it's saying no gracefully. So let's take a look. Let's review these 5 lessons heading into 2025. Also, coincidentally, my 5 biggest lessons from 2024. Number 1, embrace energetic optimization is the biggest optimization lever. Number 2, fun and coolness come down to framing. Number 3, basking in nature is an important part of my life. Number 4, going deeper instead of wider. Number 5, saying no gracefully. Those are my 5 lessons. I encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, answer this. What are yours? You had to boil it down, your 5 biggest lessons, even if your birthday is not this month, even if your birthday is coming up. Your 5 biggest lessons from 2024, from the past 12 months. I think it's important to invest ample time in contemplation, introspection. It doesn't have to be days and days. You don't need a cabin in the woods. It can be done from anywhere, just somewhere quiet, sitting still for a minute. It does wonders, raises your energy, allows you to receive insights, and it adds that level of clarity, also closure to a lot of things. Even like sharing this with you, recording it, we've been at it for a little while now. And sharing this with you, it reaffirms these lessons to me. Right. So it's the double give that way. If this episode resonated, make sure you go leave a 5-star review, share the show with 1 or 2 friends. We're just getting started here. This one's a banger, as they say. I think there's something for everyone here heading into 2025. Also want to take a moment, depending on when you're listening to this, to wish you a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season. Hope it's the best one yet, full of laughs, joy, gratitude, warmth, anything that you want to experience. Rooting for you. I'll talk to you soon. And remember, your spiritual genius awaits.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Spiritual Genius Show. Remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. When you email a screenshot of your review to info@spiritualgenius.org, we'll send you access to a special training on unlocking more of your spiritual genius in your business or career. Once again, the email address to send that screenshot of your review to is info@spiritualgenius.org. And remember, as always, the content of this episode and every other episode of this show are for entertainment purposes only. No solicitations are being made of the audience, and this show is not in any way intended to provide or be a substitute for any medical, legal, or financial advice. It is strongly recommended that you consult with a licensed professional before making any and all decisions around these matters. Till next time, stay well and remember that your spiritual genius awaits.